and moving on to just kind of love hate thing with Marines, it's hilarious because like coming up, like I've known so many Marines that while in the Marine Corps, like hate the cops, right? Just like fuck those guys. They get to go home to their bed every night, and then they're jamming me up when I'm on libo for stupid shit, for drinking underage or some bullshit, But then those same dudes, like a lot of them, when they get out, they want to become cops.
Yeah.
So it's like because they get it, right? It's a similar kind of it's all kind of part of the same game, and I think a lot of that kind of like a lot of the fraternity and a lot of the kind of the vibe from the Marine Corps that that can translate to law enforcement. So it makes sense that they want to do that, and then just the personality types too, right? They want to go defend and protect the weak from bullies and whatnot, and or they're just looking for action. There's a lot of that out there. So
Yeah, some of my best FTOs, mentors, whatever, were former Marines that got into law enforcement, and they had that. Kind of what you're talking about. It's like, listen, man, not everybody needs to go to jail. Not everybody needs to have handcuffs. Like, it was almost like it's okay to have a little dirt under your fingernails type mentality. Like, you got to assess the situation before you make that decision. And so when we discussed that, I was like, I guess it does make sense, because on the other hand, Marines are notorious for getting into some shit one way or the other, whatever it is. And what something I've been talking to my son about much more frequently now. But I thought that was a funny point. I mean, Adam, you were a Marine that turned cop. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
It's like Josh said, like it's like I never was like I hate the cops and everything. Like everybody bitch, but the one thing, and I think Josh, like you get the guys that like guys that were Marines, and they like the fucking cops, this and that. I got a fucking speeding ticket or this and that, and like they're taking away my rights and everything like that. And I've said, I think I told you this title. I'm like, I go, whoa, 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 you joined the Marine Corps, the strictest of all the service branches, and you're bitching about this. Like, this is where you had to have a haircut every week, even though the Marine Corps order is once per pay period, which is every 2 weeks. But in the grunts, no. If you didn't have a fresh haircut on Monday, you're getting your fucking ass chewed. Like, those things always amazed me. And I think like Josh, like definitely talking about like interagency and site exploitation. I remember going to Afghanistan in 11 and 12, and they had the law enforcement professionals. They had in the infantry units, and it was more um for like to build a case against people. But they would give units like these site exploitation bags, and they were awesome. Like I wanted to steal one and bring it home, but like I would have gotten in trouble. Like had GPSs, digital cameras, all this stuff for like doing crime scene out in the field. And I remember too that like they had the intel section like pushed down at the battalion level. Like they had a CI guy, they had a CI officer and then it was a lieutenant. Then they get replaced with a CI warrant officer. Like you had like the intel section had their little thing, and they had signals intel on the top. This was when I was with 1-5. It was definitely a lot better. Like we're like everything was like from within the agency was meshing better. Like Josh got to see, I didn't really see like the interagency like with civilian law enforcement or the intelligence agencies. He definitely was really privy to that. I didn't see that. I mean, it was better. We had like agency guys come down, and they were always cool. They weren't like, oh, don't talk to me, dude. I'm black ops and shit like that. They were like, nah, they're like, hey, do you think we can get some like we gotta meet an asset so and so. Do you think you guys can send a squad out like a couple blocks over, so that like keeps everybody busy while we go talk to this? So it was cool with stuff like that. Um yeah, but interagency stuff, like, I mean, Tyler, I mean, you've seen it with law enforcement too. It's like some agencies we work really good together with, and some are just like, don't want to play with others and stuff like that. You saw that as a local cop, as I did too, and then as a Fed. Some federal agencies would be like, "Yeah, dude, Yeah, we'll send our team out to blow that house up for you or hit it. And some other ones are like, "Hey, can I just get one of your coverage forms? I got they're like, no. You got to put in a TPS report and 1837.3, and then I'll send it up to the SAC, and then I'll go to the director, and but you know, a lot of like, and Josh, you hit the nail on the head really earlier in the thing with like it's all about building relationships and just talking to people and just saying, I mean, what's the worst? You go like, hey, I'm in Afghanistan, or like, let's say we're in Syria, and I say, oh, I'm like, they're like, oh, we got to get this stuff. I'm like, my buddy Josh Bates, he's a CI guy. Let me go ask him. Or I wouldn't tell him, but I just go ask him, be like, yeah, they said that no one's in this operation, like, or Tyler would be like, you Secret Service, be like, well, DSS is over there. Let's have, like, I remember when I was at the UN. PPD, 2 times they asked me to pre-post for the president and stuff like that. They're like, "Hey, do you mind?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, bro. We're all on the same team." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's how.
Well,
That's
yeah, Josh,
yeah.
you mentioned talking about infantry to intel, and it's reminiscent of being like a patrol street. Again, patrol
Uh,
street cop. There's bigger agencies that have, like New York has intel guys and all this other stuff, but like, and then going to the Fed side where you kind of like, hey, I've chased the bad guys, I've busted my knees, I've kicked in doors, and then you get to the Fed side and it's like, listen, we're cops per se, but it's very different. It's everything's a lot slower, more methodical. Like I remember my BJ, who's been on the show a bunch of times. We would go serve warrants. There's just him and I. But yo, you want to go serve some warrants? Boom, we just go kick in doors, chase dudes through the house, grab them, whatever. And that's what we did. And then I got to the Fed side. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go arrest this guy on a warrant. They're like, whoa,
oh,
we need an ops plan. We need 35 guys. I'm like, what? I said, I'm just gonna go get him. Like, I'll just grab his ass. They're like, no. And so it's a very different mindset, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, yeah. That transition can be jarring, but I think once people kind of accept it for what it is, then you can leverage both sides of that coin to get after the ultimate objectives. So there's definitely things from my infantry days that I took into casework as a CI guy, and there's definitely things that had I ever been in the position to go back to the infantry side, like I would have been much better at, having been exposed on the intel side for sure.
No, fair enough.
yeah.
All right, so let's wrap it up by tying into upcoming because I know this is book one of three or maybe four. What are we doing here?
Yeah, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. So like my contract with the publisher with Double Dagger Books is just for this one, right? So if sales are decent, then yeah, there's at least a sequel and a prequel that I already have kind of mapped out. I've started working on both. No real time, no ETA on when those would hit the streets, but yeah. So the sequel takes place really like kind of right after the end. I mean, it's a very deliberate cliffhanger at the end of Baghdad Shuffle, so that one pick up right there. And then the prequel actually jumps back to right before, on the eve of Desert Storm, and it's actually Jim, the protagonist, is
Ooh,
his stepdad.
okay.
So, and that's another one. I just think that for a lot of like fiction writers out there, I would love to see more on the military thriller side or the spy espionage
Yeah.
genre. There's not a lot about Desert Storm, right? There's not too many books that are set in that era, but there was some really interesting things that went down, especially in the lead up to that conflict. Um, so that's kind of my call to arms for the other fiction writers out there. There's a lot of good stuff to be mined there.
And I think I already know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from your perspective.
Mhm.
You hear a lot of old heads that have been, this is the way we did it for 30 years. Why fix it if it's not broken? But what is your opinion and I guess overall thoughts on the advancements that have been going on in not, gear, nutrition, and like the push on all overall health, not just mental health, but telling Marines to, you got to eat right, you got to drink a lot of water, giving them, breathable gear, whatever it is, take care of their feet, all this stuff that's going on. There's a lot of money put into it. I grew up with it, so they're like, they're weakening and softening the military. They're
It's
softening.
ridiculous. Yeah, fucking
Expound on
ridiculous.
that because I
Hey,
think I kind of telling you how I feel already because I'm like, no, dude, you got to do give them the best that they can to go do their job. But you get this old school mentality, like, oh, you're softening them and whatever.
It's all bullshit. I heard when you and the colonel were talking in your interview, I was listening to it, and the colonel came up and he says, "Let me tell you about this new generation." And I was like, "Fucking A, man, damn right." Because let me tell you, and I think I sent you that. Did I send you an email with the stuff I had on it? Yeah. So kids, it's called Kids These Days. I wrote this story called Kids These Days, and I was talking about the kids I took into combat, the 17, 18-year-olds. Yeah, I did have a 17-year-old. Believe it or not, he was in a rifle company, but he had to stay in headquarters to the day he turned 18 because he couldn't be in direct combat till he's 18. No kidding. But anyway, so I forgot where I was. I went off on a tangent there. I forgot where the hell I was. Yeah. Okay, kids these days. So yeah, these kids are awesome. So then I looked it up, and guess what? People have been bitching about kids these days for the last couple thousand years. I mean, I showed them evidence of these philosophers that everyone knows that were saying kids these days, they speak out of turn. They don't stand up when their
I remember
elders walk in, etc. Yeah.
I remember watching show World War II in color. I don't remember how long ago, within the last 15 years. And I think it's before Guadalcanal. Maybe it was either Guadalcanal or Tarawa. And I think it was Guadalcanal because it was in the beginning. And there's a reporter there, and he's in his 30s at the time. And he's like, I don't know if these kids, these Marines nowadays are going to be able to, I don't think they're going to be able to win this war and stuff like that. And I'm like cracking up, like they did that because they show like, the greatest generation and, look what they did. And I'm so happy you say that, Sergeant Major. Like, yeah, I mean, like you said, there's the 10% everywhere, but just because that like I said, like we had kids that like I'm like, why'd you come? Like 9/11 happened, I joined up, I went to Afghanistan in 11 after I was off active duty. Felt guilty. I'm like, I didn't go. I remember one of the guys I was a lieutenant with. I think he was retiring as a major. He's like, Mac, you already been there. You done that. You don't have to. I'm like Scott. I feel guilty because there's still guys there doing it, and I think that's a generational thing because you raised kids that were like 24, 25, and like they're like, I got out and this kicked off and I felt guilty. I needed to come back and do it. And that's what it is. It's.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So I tell you, I want to tell you one story about in Baghdad, and it was Corporal Fernandez, and I think he was 19 years old at the time. So this 19-year-old kid is leading. This is a patrol through Baghdad, Iraq, right after the invasion. It's right after the invasion. We've kind of secured the area, but Corporal Fernandez leads this patrol that had me as his first sergeant. His company gunny was on it, the gunny from the tanks, and the gunny from tracks, and a bunch of staff NCOs, sergeants, etc., in all these tracks and all these vehicles. But the corporal was in charge, and the corporal led that patrol, and everyone did what that corporal told them to do until we got to this one neighborhood where the fat guy in the neighborhood, in Iraq, when you want to know who's in charge, just look for the fat dude. Find the one fat dude, and he knows what's going on. So anyway, the fat dude in that neighborhood didn't want to listen to a 19-year-old kid. So I went over and told him exactly what Corporal Fernandez had just told him, and told him to go away. Anyway, but my point is, kids these days, that 19-year-old kid took 4 tanks, 8 Amtraks, etc., through Baghdad, and it probably wasn't 8, probably 4, through Baghdad, and he was in charge, and he stayed in charge, and he led that patrol like a professional. That's kids these days. That's my comparison. So there's a saying, every Marine's a rifleman. And I actually wrote I have an entire damn near a book's worth of stuff on every Marine's a rifleman. So when I left Special Operations Training Group in 2001, one of my buddies, recon dude, he goes, "Hey Dave, I know you say no to anybody, you won't say no to anybody, you train everybody." I says, "All right, whatever." He says, "That might have worked here, but that's not going to work in the grunts." So I got to 1-7, and my commander was Captain Barr. I don't want to get into details, but he's actually he works up the road from me here. Okay. Anyway, he's a badass. But I said to him, I says, "Hey, sir," he knew I came from Special Operations Training Group. I says, "Sir, hey, if you give me an opportunity, I will help you create the baddest motherfucking company you've ever seen in your life. And he goes, Gunny, go for it. So, and actually, this started after my first live fire. So, my first live fire, there's like, hey, we're going out to do a live fire. I get out there and I watch these Marines shoot 18 gazillion rounds at nothing. At nothing.
Sounds like 29 palms. Like that's,
20 pounds.
yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's,
So,
that's
what they did, they were training for maneuver warfare. So, these guys are setting a base of fire. These guys are doing that. And I was like, this is bullshit. So, what I did, which I still think was ingenious, is I went down to the LAVs, light armored vehicle guys, and their ammo cans are they're big. So what I did is I got like 100 of those ammo cans from them, and then I just carried them in my vehicle out to the desert, and I could put targets everywhere. I didn't need a range. I just set up ranges because it's 29 palms. You can shoot just about anywhere you want. So you just go out there and I'd set up my range, but I changed it and I put a kill zone in there. I put a kill zone that they couldn't see. We used a nail, so it was invisible. So if they hit in the kill zone, we gave them a point out of the kill zone, or 1 and then 2, whatever. But we made them hit the targets. And then the captain, I said, sir, let's play a game here. It plays to be a winner. So every time we trained from that point on, we kept, statistics on what platoon shot the best, and whoever shot the best got to go to the army and get on liberty right away. It pays to be a winner. So we did all kinds of stuff like that. And I did a lot of things for that company. Like when we hike, weapons company or the weapons platoon have to carry much heavier gear. And what we would always do is we'd go to the armory. So we'd have 170 Marines at the armory trying to get all their shit out of one window. And I was like, this is asinine. Here's what we're going to do. Weapons platoon is always first. And I'll give them a half hour. And then every half hour later, I'll give another platoon. So they just walked up and got their gear and walked away. Right in sitting at the armory for 2 hours doing absolutely freaking nothing. So I set up my humps that way too. Weapons in the front, and then I operated first, second, third, and then the next hump was second, third, first, etc. So I rotated them because being the last platoon in the hike always sucks.
Yeah, the accordion
Because everyone
effect.
stretches out and you get screwed. Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
I think because I remember when I was in 3-4, it was. I had a company commander that was crazy, but he was actually really big. He would do things like that too. He would get 4x4s, and like when we were out in the field, you guys were in Oki at the time, so we were out in the field because just before you guys got back, and he would like the fire team that knocked down that 4x4 first would get he would bring them a pizza out when we were in the field, but he did it where it's like, all right, you only got 50 rounds per guy, so I remember that because Sergeant Major, better than me, like a lot of times I don't know how it is now, but like a lot of times it was like, all right, we're just going to go out and do a dump X. Remember at the end of CAX when you're out at Lavic Lake and they're like, I'm like, what are we shooting at? We're just spraying ammo. Like we should be getting some feedback here.
I didn't do that. In fact, when we're in deployment, after we relieved you from 3-4, you were there in 2001. We got there in 2002. So at the end of the year, like September, my buddies from SOTG they were still there, and they're like, "Hey, Dave, we got to get rid of 100,000 9mm rounds." So I took 50 Marines from 1-7, 10 from each company. I took them down to Camp Hansen for 5 days and shot their asses off. So they got like 200 rounds a day for 5 days. And they were absolute badasses when they were done. Because I don't do that simple shooting. We do some combat shooting.
Yeah, Sergeant Major trained his guys to be, combat shooters. They may have not gotten like this in the bullseye. They may have gotten this, but those rounds were all in kill zones on dudes.
Well, so let me ask you, where did you get that ideology from? Was it something you were taught, experienced, or you just kind of sat back and looked at it and was like, "This is dumb. We should do it a different way"? Like, where did that come from?
That's a good question. Okay, so this is my philosophy from when I was a corporal on, is that I will do everything in my power to ensure that Marine knows everything they can to survive in combat. so that when their family comes to me and says, "Did you do everything you could to save them in combat?" I better be able to answer yes. So I train my Marines hard, and I even had captains tell me, I stayed with them, they'd be like, "Hey, Sergeant, you need to relax. You're killing these guys." I says, "Hey, sir, I'm training for combat."
You got a Bronze Star with a V for Valor. What time frame was that? Was that the 6 years of the unit before that, or when did that occur?
Yeah, that was in the unit. So I had zero, although I I'd been in some tight spots, shall we say, in Central and South America. I was in Bolivia during a pretty rough time, where some bullets were flying. Evo Morales actually put a price on my head when I was there, which is an interesting story. But
You should frame that somewhere.
yeah, well, I should have kept it. Yeah, I really should have. There was an announcement. I should have kept it, but I didn't have I was a slick sleeve on the right side until I deployed as a physician in GWAT, and that set me up for success in a lot of ways, because more so than your average troop. I think of these guys that went to basic training, AIT, and then show up to a unit just in time to deploy. I had decades of stress inoculation under my belt.
Yeah.
I had been in enough simulated firefights, with realistically simulated firefights, and also been in some direct life-threatening danger, both through aircraft, parachuting, and, shit that I was doing in Central and South America, that I could handle that level of stress. And the same for these physicians. Doctors go to med school, they go to college, they go to med school, they go to residency, and now they're plunged into this weird environment.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, there's a guy who was in the class ahead of me in residency. He was 1 year ahead of me in residency. And I think he almost had to get put in a straitjacket and locked up, because he wasn't prepared, and he never left a fob, but he just wasn't prepared. The carnage was just too much for him. And he's been a little off, I think, ever since. And there are guys like that. And that's not a testament to, like him being weak, because, I could have easily been there, but like I said, I had decades of stress inoculation. I knew the deal, right? I'd seen the movie script before I auditioned, right? So I knew when I stepped off the plane, in Iraq, I knew, I knew what I was getting into. But so to answer your question, I know it was kind of a roundabout way, but yeah, I have two Bronze Stars. There's an oak leaf on there. One's a tour Bronze Star. I don't really count that one. That's the one I actually got in the mail.
That sounds very Army.
But that is the cool part, is they didn't make me stand there. That's a testament to SOF, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and there was a yellow sticky. It said, "I figured you had better shit to do than come and stand for this."
Because if that was the Marine Corps, it doesn't matter what rank you are. There would be some first sergeant or sergeant major. You could be out for 5 years. They're like, "Well, we're going to give this to you, sir.
They'll call you back.
You got to come back,
Civilian." Yes.
Come back and stand in formation for this. So like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, should I wear my Best Buy shirt? Like,
Did you get a CIB, or did you get the other combat?
No, I have a CMB. I have an EIB. I have an expert infantry badge, right? That shows my ability to memorize minutia for very short periods of time and do it in a completely different way than you actually do it when you're doing it in combat, but it's the way the book says. So I have an EIB, and then I got a combat medics badge not when I got my tour Bronze Star, but later on a subsequent trip when I did get a Bronze Star with V, and when that was actually awarded, for action in combat.
Yeah, I think that, dude, that fucking, again, man, total badass. I can relate to you a little bit.
See, I see it, not to interrupt you, man, but I see it as right place, right time. Because I don't think I did anything the night that I got my BSM with V. I didn't do anything that I hadn't done dozens of times before. I didn't do anything that other guys, hundreds of guys, have probably done. It was the right mission, with the right people watching on the display feed from somewhere else, and with the right guys to my left and right. And it was like, hey, this is, somebody else decided this was a big deal. Not necessarily what I did was a big deal, but what I was a part of was a big deal. So, but I accept it. I'm not trying to diminish it, because when I accepted it, knowing that not a lot of physicians get a Bronze Star with V, I'm accepting this as a representation of all the dudes in the unit that I'm in who have gone and done stuff even at higher levels than this, but it was between wars and they never got a recognition for it.
How were you able to take your Army training for all intents and purposes and overlay that and make those adjustments throughout? Is it just the way you kind of integrated yourself in the team, or what do you think lent to you being able to do that?
I had to be open to listen. It was probably the biggest thing and to recognize that the way that I did I came into it with a very open mind. Before I even really started to get into it, I started to look at just on my own. I was like, okay, well, what are the differences here going to be? What are the key differences going to be, both tactically and medically? And the biggest thing that like jumped out at me is you're never, because of aerial medevac assets, you're really never going to be farther away from than maybe 30 minutes from some level of trauma center, right? And for that reason, there was in the early days, and I saw this kind of right as I was getting into tactical medicine, and a great example is that individual who said that he didn't let his officers carry tourniquets, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want they shouldn't be carrying tourniquets." Well, I looked at it totally different. I'm like, okay, if we know that a tourniquet can stay on for 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours, and if nobody's ever farther away from a trauma center than 30 minutes, everybody should get a tourniquet.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just put a tourniquet on every extremity, and you're going to be okay with that, right? You're going to largely have good outcomes with that. Right. And I was fortunate at the time. I worked for a company that wanted me to go to a lot of these meetings and conventions. So that's when I started going to TECC and started seeing what they were stressing policy wise. I had guys like Dr. Josh Bobko, Dr. Reed Smith, who would get up and give presentations and saying, "Hey, this is what the injury patterns are in mass shooting scenarios and in what law enforcement officers are going to see." And they're not, the injury patterns aren't the same as what we saw overseas. So I had to adjust what I was emphasizing in training, based on that. But you always have to recognize if you know what you don't know, I think you're largely going to be successful. And I knew that there was a lot that I didn't know. And I looked for mentors early on, guys like Jim Vredis, who runs the Center for Tactical Medicine here in Texas, who taught me, he's a guy who's never been in the military. And he's basically everything that he knows about tactical medicine. He's had to seek out that knowledge on his own, but he had an invaluable amount of knowledge when it comes to how that applies in a law enforcement scenario. And those were the guys that I turned to ask questions of, to kind of figure this whole thing out. Because, somebody who comes out of the military and says, okay, well, this is how we did it. This is how TCCC does it. So this is just how we're going to do it. They're going to fail. Yeah, they're going to fail. So you have to be open to the environment, the personnel, the budget, the equipment, and all these other, confounding variables that are going to make things different.
100%. That was some of the things, the hurdles that we encountered was these individuals were coming out of the military. And like you mentioned, an example, they were used to having training cycles and we don't have those, and they wanted to commit our people and assets to doing certain things that just weren't feasible because we had lack of training. It wasn't going to be possible. So it was, one of those things that like I said, it took a little bit of a learning curve to get them to where we needed to be. But I think a lot of it was they had, these individuals had bigger egos and they thought they knew a lot more stuff because they had great careers in the military, but it didn't directly translate and they didn't realize that,
Or was that always your plan?
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't say it's always my plan, but at some point, around middle school, maybe early high school, I saw the movie The Green Berets, and there were actually like three of us that were like, yeah, that looks like something I want to do. Um, two of my buddies were a year ahead of me. They ended up kind of paving the way. One of which, my buddy Brian Edwards, ended up ultimately being sergeant major over all of Special Forces Command. So he was a year ahead of me. He went directly to SF right out of high school. I wanted to do the same, and then I signed up on delayed entry a year in advance, and they said, "Hey, I'm sorry to tell you, there's no more straight high school to SF contracts anymore. Those aren't a thing. They went away for a pretty long time."
Yeah.
They said, "Well, you can go to Ranger Battalion," and I had already talked enough and done enough research in the pre-internet age that that I figured that would be a good number two plan. Would be go to Ranger Regiment. What I didn't know at the time was that was absolutely the best thing on the planet that could have happened to a stupid 18-year-old kid that didn't know shit but thought he had it all figured out. Because the discipline that I got in Ranger Regiment and the foundation that I built in Ranger Regiment, and you guys know this because you know the Marine Corps. Ranger Regiment has often been accused of being the Department of the Army version of the Marine Corps. And I think in a lot of ways it's very true. And back in the 80s, we still wore high and tights. People would confuse us with Marines everywhere we went. I remember going to Paris Island in some time off capacity and having a drill like start dressing me down like I was a boot. And I went to parade rest and I said, all due respect, drill sergeant, I'm a specialist in the United States Army. And he's like, "Oh, Ranger?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Carry on." And he let me do my thing because I was wearing a midriff T-shirt. That's why he was yelling at me.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh man, he was pissed. I thought steam was gonna fucking come out of his ears.
Like I remember when I first came in the Marine Corps, it was like you had a high and tight in the Ranger Regiment. Officers enlisted.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Then it was like what, like 02, 03, 04 maybe they started relaxing the grooming standards.
Yeah, it was sometime in GWAT, maybe a little bit before that, but I know on through all the 80s, it was you got a fresh haircut every Monday morning, or you were telling somebody why not. So
yeah, that's Tyler. That's the Marine Corps. Like you didn't have especially in the grunts, if you didn't have a fresh haircut on Monday, you were. I mean, I heard like you would get thrashed and stuff like that.
Yep,
I
my
can
son.
only imagine what the Ranger Regiment was in the 80s.
Yeah,
it was a different era.
Yeah, I call my son every Saturday, and it's either before or after his haircut. So he does. It's a week. Yeah, so it's a weekly thing. Understood.
I have to admit, Mike, as I got up in rank as being a dirty officer, still got a haircut. Look, I've been retired since December of last year. Still get a haircut once a week, but I used to get my haircuts, especially when I was out of the infantry, like when I was in the reserves and something. But if I went on orders, I would get them on Wednesdays because I didn't want to sit in the barbershop on a Sunday
Yeah, right.
and wait. Because then
Yeah.
you didn't want to be the dick that someone was like, "Oh, there's the captain, there's the major." Or they make you cut the line, and then there's all these lance corporals that they have to get it done because they got to go back and clean their barracks, and they're gonna get thrashed on Monday morning, and I'm just gonna walk in and be like, "No, I that's why I stayed out of there."
Yeah. I had a really good platoon sergeant for a while. I mean, I had several over my time there, but a guy by the name of Keith Kessinger, and he was like the epitome of taking care of the troops. And on Fridays, we would do this quite a bit. On Fridays, he would say, "All right, take a long lunch and get your hair cut, so you don't got to worry about it over the weekend."
That's awesome.
So, and we'd go as a squad, and we'd sit in there, and everybody'd get their hair cut, and then we'd all go and get a pizza or something like that, and then go back to work for the afternoon to get released for the weekend. And yeah, it was that was a good leadership thing because he was looking out for the troops. So it's 2001. I've taken my MCAT. I haven't graduated yet, but I have all the credits. I'm just waiting to submit for graduation because if I don't get picked up for medical school, I'm going to do some more classes and probably pivot again. So I'm just waiting. And I'm applying to medical schools. I'm in LaRondia, Columbia. I'm on the sat phone talking to med schools where I applied, checking on the status of my application, and 9/11 happens.
Yep, that's what I was gonna get to that. Yeah.
At which point I'm like, okay, change in plan. There's a war on. I'm not going to medical school. So I get called into the sergeant major's office and he says, "What's this I hear about you not going to medical school?" And I said, there's a war on, Sergeant Major. He goes, look, here's the deal. He said, first and foremost, this war isn't going anywhere. He goes, everybody thinks this is going to be another whatever, Desert Storm, or this is going to be another, Grenada, Panama. He goes, I'm here to tell you, this is going to be a protracted conflict. I see the writing on the wall. I've been around a bit. This isn't going anywhere. You're going to have plenty of time to go to med school, go to residency. And then the most important thing being, you come back to the soft community and you're a doctor that we don't have to teach. This is your ass. This is a hole in the ground, right? You already know what we do, so you can hit the ground running on day one. And he goes, I'm going to tell you something else. He goes, we are last, 7th group is last on the rotation to go. So you not going to med school today, be prepared to sit around for 2 years. Oh, and guess what that probably means? You're going to be on your SWIC tour, right? You're going to be working at the schoolhouse, or, you're going to be doing something else. You won't be on it. He goes, I guarantee you won't be on a team. He said, because you will have made E8 by then. He said, you'll either be on a committee over at the schoolhouse, or maybe the first sergeant of the 18 Delta course, or you'll be a team sergeant, or you'll be in battalion headquarters. He goes, so things are going to be a lot different. He said, you need to go to med school. And everybody in my leadership agreed with him. They said, you need to go. And sure enough, they were right. When I got to brag 2 years later to do a family medicine rotation, my company had just returned from their very first deployment.
Got it.
So he was 100% right. And, and I did exactly what he said. I finished med school, did emergency medicine residency, because I knew that was the key to getting me back into operational medicine, specifically into special operations medicine. And I was lucky enough in residency. I got a phone call from an old battalion surgeon who was in JSOC. He said, do you know what unit I'm in? I said, yes. He said, would you be interested in being in this unit? I said, yes. He said, okay, you're going to get another call in about 5 minutes. And 5 minutes later, I got unidentified number. And a retired Navy chief who talked really fast, got all my information. And he said, I need you to look at your calendar right now. Tell me if you can be out here on these dates. I said, yes, I can. He said, okay, I'm cutting you TDY orders. I'm going to email them to you. And he said, we'll see you then. And I was actually coming off, I had coming off a night shift and I hadn't slept, but I was so pinging.
Yeah.
I actually ended up getting in my car, driving to work, driving to the hospital. And it was a Thursday. So it was staff day. So a bunch of staff were working because the residents were in grand rounds. And I walked up to the 2 staff that were on just happened to be dudes who had been in the unit. And I said, hey, I think I'm interviewing for the unit. And they were up so fucking excited for me. And they're like, oh, it's going to be awesome. This is going to be great. You're going to love it. You're perfect for the job. And I interviewed and I got hired and I did 6 years at the unit, 3 of it back at Bragg and 3 of it working remotely from Fort Hood, where, I would kind of pick and choose what trips I wanted to go on. Although I actually did get called up to go on some short notice, hey, we need you right now type of trips. So it was a great 6 years, the best 6 years in the Army, because it was the time in my career where I was like, I can 100%, when you go do something and it makes the front page of the New York Times the next day, you're doing good.
Good stuff.
That like you were maybe when he was parenting from a different place because of his own stresses and things, that part of the trusting him as a parent was kind of now that you guys are kind of in a different place and he's coming from a heart of wisdom, you said you are trusting him to go through those processes with the kids too. So huge point too. And I think that's important too, as now this isn't just saying, as moms, we sometimes do want to come in and go, that one's mine, and we have to remember, we have to step back and let them father and be mother and know kind of like where our role is so that our kids can be parented by both of us and make the best version of themselves as a result of it.
Yeah, and that's super important. And I understand the role of a father and the importance of that for a child. But when you're parenting out of anger, that's very difficult to now allow that parent to parent, right? So now it's so much easier now. I see the difference in his parenting style, which makes it now easier for me to back off because I know my kids need that insight. Like I know that, but it's just easier to stand by and let the kids get in a little trouble if they need to by dad, you know?
Did your
So,
faith, you think, lead you down this path along with maybe the trust growing between you and Jason when it came to the parenting part of it? And do you think that the faith really helped you to kind of go, okay,
oh yeah. For myself and for Jason, I know for Jason too, he dives in the Bible all the time and he really tries to live that out. And I see the difference with him and the kids. And I know it's because of that. I know it's because of that book. And the same thing for me. I read it and I try not to just read to read. I really try to like focus on what I'm reading. Sometimes I have to go back. I have a study Bible and that is super helpful. But yeah, I would pray all the time for just patience and understanding. And if I see Jason maybe say something I wouldn't say that might be unkind, I will pray on it. Even if it takes the whole day, I will pray for patience with my husband. I will pray for my husband to come to an answer to be able to fix things or make things better. Or so yes, I guess long story short, for me it's made a big difference because now the first thing I do is I will pray and I will pray to how can I be a better wife to my husband today? How can I be a wife? How can I be the wife that he needs in this situation? Instead of just being angry and be like, excuse me, what that, and it takes a lot. And there's some
it
days,
does?
there was a recent day and I had to like just pray all day. And by midday, I was starting to, my flesh was getting annoyed, like this mother, and I was upset. And I just, continue to pray that when the time comes that we have a discussion about it, I am patient, I am understanding, I am thoughtful to the words that he's saying. And it's been really helpful for us. So yes, I think my faith plays a huge role into our daily lives.
Yeah. That's so, like I said, just such an incredible thing that I think people will miss sometimes that relationship formation, that building of trust again, and incorporating faith is going to lead you the right way. Your believing in him is going to lead you the right way. So I'm sorry, Tyler, I keep cutting you off.
No, you're good. To Veronica's surprise, we're over an hour at about 10, and I want to make sure we have space for Living Blue
Yes.
Apparel, Igala, anything else you want to touch on. But I could sit here and listen to this. I love it because once
Yeah.
again, you're both saying it with such ease, but having been someone who lived through it, the not having that to having it, having it now, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It's significantly different in all aspects. So it's almost like you guys are talking to me because I'm like, yep, I've been through that. I did that. I was angry. I did that a lot. Yep, I understand. Like for me, I'm just sitting here going, yeah, I did all those things. So um, again, it helps. And again, a lot of the reasons that I like this podcast is it's not that no one else has other things they're going through, but a lot of people they don't talk this way. They don't speak with just honesty and like, yeah, we're great now. We're in a great place. 2 days ago, I was about to curse that motherfucker out. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just calm down for a second. We're coming from a good place. Just to hear that, like that's honest. That's real. That's how things really work. It's not all, social media relationships where every day you're like on a vacation to Paris. And there's never been an argument between the two of you, which I hate. This is
Because things could get better. Yeah. It's not going to be
always.
perfect, though, right? You're going to argue. You're going to annoy each other. I mean, it, that's just, that's just what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Jason had to learn the word patience. You know, J- Jason's a perfectionist. I am not. If things are a little messy, I will leave it there for a bit, maybe till it bugs me. To this day, I still come into Jason's office and kind of move things around just for fun. Um, but I think he had to learn, it made him good at his job. It made him amazing at his job, but at home, not so much. Uh, so he had to learn patience. He had to learn how to have a relationship with his children. Now he saw them a little more full time. So he had to learn how to have a relationship with them. And then we had to learn how to have a relationship. Again, we started our lives together so young, and it was right away, you know, children and his work. So there was not a lot of dating time. So now us as the kids are getting older, we both had to learn to date each other again and be around each other again. Um, I joke that a couple years ago asked me to be around Jason all day, I would go crazy. Or to work with Jason, like there was no way I could work with him because for him things were so black or white. It's this way or that way. So there was a lot of learning in so many different aspects of both of our lives for ourselves and then for each other, and then now incorporating the children into that. So
That's an excellent explanation, in my opinion, because
So good.
patience nails it. I think that, and that type A personality works really great for being a cop. But being a husband, being a wife, you have to be able to give. It's one of those things that sometimes that they think, well, I have this great skill. It's afforded me this great career. Why can't I incorporate it at home? And it doesn't work.
yeah.
Yeah. Veronica Mo's also married. They're both hostage negotiators, and they will be like, don't use don't use your tricks on me. Also, Mo, I just have to say this. Veronica is just throwing out little nuggets. Like, it's like, we just have to start dating each other again. Huge. A lot of people don't do that. We just had to learn patience with each other. Huge. A lot of people don't do that. Like, you're just, I don't, you just move in this world where you're like, this is just how it is, and this is how we got to be. But it takes people years, and sometimes they never get it. And unfortunately, that's what causes rifts. But for you to acknowledge it, see it, and still to still be there standing next to Jason with all that going on, that is huge. Like, that's such a big thing. I don't know how to express it enough for you, because it's like you're just like, yeah, we just had to start dating each other, doing these. That's awesome. And I'm hoping the dates are better than they would have been when you were 18.
They're a little bit better.
A little more established now.
No, they're a little bit better now. But I think you don't learn those things unless you go through it, right? Like we went through a lot of turmoil and arguments and fights. And I mean, we went through a lot for us to be at this point now to be able to say what I said with just ease, right? You have to go just like, to jump back to my mom and her being a single mom, you learn certain things. Like I was never upset about what my mom did or didn't do because we're all just trying our best to go back to that. We're all just trying our best and you learn from your parents. And I would joke, I'm going to screw up my kids somehow. I just hope it's not too bad. Like it's my first time being a mom and it's my first time being a wife. And I hope they learn from me. And I think that one of the toughest things that if I did something wrong, I would have to call out myself to my kids and I would talk to them about it. Like, well, mommy did this. And you don't want to do that, right? Well, certainly I don't want to admit whenever I'm wrong, but to talk to your kids like that, because I think that's how you learn. So I learn from our experience together through all the hardships. I learn from my mom and her hardships. Like that's all we can do is just hopefully learn and try to now implement a new way of existing into our lives, especially for the children, just to make it better for them.
Yeah.
Veronica, that's huge.
Well, yeah. Well, my training started with September 11th. So
I did not realize that. Okay.
Yeah. So July 1st, 2001 was my first day, and September 11th was what was that? 2 months later.
Yeah.
They pulled us out, and that was essentially my first assigned job.
So they pulled you guys out of your academy?
They pulled us out of the academy as gray shirts, and we were out for a while doing everything from directing traffic down on the West Side Highway to, some guys got the morgue. I did not have the morgue, thankfully.
I didn't even think about that.
Escorting residents back to their apartments off the West Side Highway, and you go into the apartments, and if they had left their windows open, it was completely, white with soot. And then they pulled us back into the academy as if nothing happened and just on with the rest of the curriculum. So it was 9 months long.
Wow. So you're brand new.
Brand new.
You're in training. You get pulled out for a worldwide horrific event.
Yeah.
Does that make you rethink? What's your mindset in that point?
Back then?
Yes, back then. In that
young moment,
that young Jason that is wide-eyed and doing this job.
Yeah. I just speak for myself. I was
looking back, so I have a different perspective now. I'm looking back through that lens, and it was, I think I was excited because, oh man, I get to be a real cop already.
Right.
Granted, we had no guns, no handcuffs, no batons. We had
oh my God,
we clearly looked like we did not belong out there, which is why they sent us out with instructors. But I think I was excited, like I could be a real cop, and I was out on the street within 2 months. But at the same time, it was I started my career during that time, and everybody loved us.
Yeah.
Everybody, even the ones that maybe didn't, they all loved us.
Yeah.
And then I retired September 2020 with
very different
experience.
Wow, what a interesting like way to see how the microcosm of how law enforcement kind of the pendulum swings.
Yeah, just in one career, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's incredible.
So, because you eventually worked up to homicide detective, which, you know, again, is people don't understand. In some agencies, that could take, you may never get in, even if you really wanted. It could take 20 years, whatever it is. But what did the progression of your career look like at NYPD?
Yeah, so I started out at the 84th Precinct as a patrol cop.
Okay. Like, were you actually patrolling like in a car? Because I know some of those guys like stand in front of a building that has 30,000 people, and that's
patrol.
Yeah, so that's a foot post. And we all had plenty of foot posts, but I was lucky enough to get grabbed by my friend Kevin. He said, "Listen, I need a patrol partner."
Yeah.
Okay, I get in the car. So because of him, I was able to get Steady Sector Charlie with him, and I was out on patrol pretty quick downtown. Downtown Brooklyn, right off Tillery Street, right off the exit of the BQE, Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, all the courts. And I did a year on patrol. And then I had the opportunity to go to the conditions unit. At the time, I don't know what it looks like today.
Yeah.
But the conditions unit was all quality of life offenses. We were plain clothes, so that was cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
When you say quality of life, what are you enforcing?
People drinking in public, you know, using a bathroom in public. You know, things like that. Violations, misdemeanors.
Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity to go to that unit, and listen, I drove an unmarked car. I was in jeans and boots, you know, good tactical.
Yeah, of course.
Gear.
Yeah, of course.
Where you can't run after anyone because you're wearing boots, but you need to look good. Gotta look good. Nobody could tell who you were. We all had blue jeans, Timbs, a jersey of some sort, and a ball cap, and we were completely inconspicuous.
Nobody knew.
Undercover.
Nobody knew. Nobody
the most
knew.
Undercover. I love it. We actually had a sergeant at Hillsborough that wore cowboy boots.
Yes, he did.
And I remember watching him. He did these super high kicks whenever he was kicking the door, but his foot would just slide.
But you look good.
You good doing it.
He absolutely did.
Was the idea behind being in plain clothes so that you could walk up and actually be able to observe the crimes, or were you undercover and kind of infiltrating that way?
I mean, so we weren't quote unquote undercover. It was just basically an element of you know, surprise.
Got it.
From there, I went into the crime team, so that was all felonies.
Okay.
Right.
It's interesting how they break
it down.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you commingled, but I did crime. I was in crime for 6 months. I was in conditions about two plus years, crime for about 6 months. And then I was lucky enough to get pulled up to the 84th Precinct Detective Squad with 4.5 years on.
That's very quick.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand how quick that is.
That's incredible.
That is very quick.
That says a lot about what you were doing.
Yeah.
The job quality that you were putting out.
Yeah, either that or they were short.
I mean, detective, we've had specialty, you know, SWAT guys, bomb guys, and you're going 100 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden
stops.
Have your retirement party, you get your watch or your plaque or whatever your agency does, and then the next day, boop, and someone else is driving your car, your badge number, and it's like, thank you for everything you did, but now, boom, you're gone. Did that hit you at any point, or were you already kind of you had something to move?
So a little bit, right? So I was already kind of 1 foot in the door in the behavioral health space, and I wound up working for a behavioral health care company for a couple of years after I retired, while the book was coming about, while the apparel company was coming about. Equine therapy hadn't started as an interest as of yet. But if I had to say one point that I kind of was like, wow, that's when I was picking my doing all the exit paperwork.
Yeah.
And you're planning for your death as you're retiring.
Yeah, you got to sign all that paperwork.
While I'm starting the rest of my life, I'm planning for the end of it.
Right.
At the exact same time. And I didn't know, my co-author Barbara, she's a thanatologist, right?
What is that? What is that?
Yeah, right. So she joked. She's like, "Yeah, I make a great conversation at a bar, right? Because death and dying, grief, bereavement, right?
Yeah.
People don't realize that the retirement process is a grieving process.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying it that way. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
You transferring is a grieving process, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you are changing from one thing to another that you enjoy, it affects you,
Yeah.
right? So I was leaving one world, stepping into another. You might say, what is scary about your family? Well, you know what? It's learning how to be around them in a way that I haven't been around them in over 20 years.
Yeah.
Is it going to work?
Yeah.
And that's scary. It's stressful. I miss the thrill of the hunt. There was
Yeah.
nothing like hunting a human being that murdered somebody.
Yeah.
You can't give me that high anywhere. Well, maybe on a horse now.
There you go. See, we're getting in there.
Yeah, but it's a grieving process. So
Yeah.
it was, I remember coming back from my financial advisor's office when I was, finishing everything up, and it's all right, I'm doing this. And I was on Sunrise Highway in Long Island, driving back to my house in Massapequa, and I got emotional. I'm like, I'm not signing in tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't, and it took probably a good year and a half before a holiday would come up, and I didn't have that angst like,
Yeah.
I ordered in.
Yeah.
Like, wait, you dummy, you're retired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
You can go there. You can be present there.
I could, but it was in there.
Yeah. And the anxiety can translate. Like it's the anxiety of, oh, I don't get this call, but now I have this other now I have to deal with family and do all the things that I haven't been there for.
Like, what does it look like?
What does it look like now that I'm here?
So we made the decision together. I said, I spent over 20 years without her in what I was doing.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything now.
That's
and
awesome.
we
haven't talked about it. She does this all with you. Your wife, I'm sorry.
Yep. She was my first and foremost proofreader, editor.
How fun was that?
Listen, she tells me what to do anyway. So it really, honestly, I've gotten to the point where I couldn't send anything over without her looking at it first. I'll show her my social media posts. All right. Is this all right? Yeah. And I got to the point where I'm just so used to that now. Like I have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise I'll be like, I should have. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're involved doing the book together, obviously the apparel company together. We've built that from the ground up, and now we're entering this equine world together. And I'm just excited at the opportunity to change and be a positive influence in the lives of people that are struggling. There are people that are struggling. You don't need to go through some of the things you're going through.
Yeah.
Learn from others. Let us shorten that curve.
Yes.
That learning curve for you. You're still going to have to learn on your own.
Yeah.
But maybe we shorten the time a little bit that you would need to get to that point where you're okay and your family's okay again. I couldn't have written the book without Barbara, right? She shortened that learning curve for me.
Yeah.
And I had a mentor. She's still my mentor. So why not have that in the behavioral health space? Why not have that person that says, listen, it's going to be bumpy.
Yeah.
Right. And I need it to be bumpy for you. You need it to be bumpy for you, but you don't have to go over those bumps alone.
Yeah.
Right.
About
All right. Sorry. So your brother was at the Pentagon because he was dropping his fiance's brother off.
His fiance's brother. Yep. They had gone up together. His fiance's brother dropped him off. He told security, the people that were trying to keep people away from the building, I'm a combat lifesaver. So they let him through. And so when I got there, I told them the same thing. And I went and found him, and we were just standing there. I remember just standing there with him for hours, just watching the building burn, watching them bring people to my left. I remember them bringing body bags out. And my brother had actually made a joke because, the firemen are trying to put the fire out. And he said, he had made a joke. He's like, she's fine. She's just under her desk trying to, get air because they're spraying so much water in there right now. But once, the fire's out, and it's one of those things that you just tell yourself to get through it. And I just remember thinking to myself, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And after a few hours, he told me to go home. He said, just go home and sit with mom. And he came in later that night, and obviously he had no answers. And then for the next 3 months, he would go to almost daily meetings, updates on the recovery of remains, because what they had done was set up tents in the parking lot of the Pentagon, and they would just take big heaping piles of debris and they would sift through it for, remains. And when they finally had her funeral, they had only identified 85% of her. And I believe the funeral itself was finally held on December 4th.
Jeez.
So yeah, it was a tough day. I usually don't go to work on September 11th. I hadn't until this past year. I work at our local grocery store here, and I really enjoy it. And I thought, it's time to finally get out of the house and, be a part of society on that day and find something to do, take my mind off of it. And, I found that talking about it helps, sometimes.
It's funny. I was listening to you when you were saying about how I didn't feel like I had done my part. You're not the first person that we've had on our show to kind of say that. One of our individuals that has been on our show, and he actually wrote a book, Hiding in Plain Sight. Doug White talked about that was one of the things that really impacted his mental health later on in life because of something that occurred in the military where his unit deployed, they went without him, and he just beat himself down about not doing his part.
Yeah.
I think that is something that is innate in individuals who do this job, who become military, who go to law enforcement. They have such a selfless identity almost that they do sometimes beat themselves up about not doing what they consider their part. So it was very interesting to hear you say, like, oh, I hadn't felt like I'd done my part until I deployed. But then on the back end, like you said, there came a point where you said, all right, I think I've done enough now.
That time period in itself, I was gone 33 out of 41 months. So if you put that into perspective,
that's crazy.
My daughter was in elementary school and my son was just one in junior high. So, 33 out of 41 months, that's a long time to miss your kids growing up. And then, you go back to Korea, I was gone for another year, so that's almost, and now you take my mom at 62 with cancer. I was done. I mean, I got to a bad enough place where I almost took my own life. And the only thing that saved my life is my son was in a bedroom about 30 feet away from me. And had he not been in the house, I probably wouldn't be here today. So I guess I say that, and that's hard for me to say on a podcast with a bunch of people listening that I don't know. But I say that because I thought that was the end. I thought my mom's not here anymore. So that process was a couple of New Year's Eves ago. I was drinking and I had said some things out loud that my kids heard. I was mumbling to myself because I was drunk, acting like an idiot. My wife was already in bed and I had said some things and my kids overheard it and they went to my wife, individual and marriage counseling simultaneously. It's huge.
Yeah. So again, Adam Macaluso, he talks about it openly on the show, but he combat veteran, also married, beautiful wife, Jamie. But they lost their daughter, Lucy, to cancer a couple of years ago. And so he has openly talked about it and he talks to three. He's got a PTSD therapist that he talks to, a marriage counselor, and then a grieving counselor. And he's like, it's almost like a routine for him. He's like, he honors those times because he's like, he could see where it goes because he's had friends that have gone down a different path and he doesn't want to be that guy. And again, I'm not saying anything out of turn here, but the fact that thank you for talking about seeking help and seeking therapy because so many men specifically, I'm a man, Mo, I'll talk about it from men.
I had one guy, one counselor said to me, something I'll never forget. He said, when you come here, you bring your rucksack and you have all your issues in your rucksack. And when you leave, you leave that rucksack outside my door. You don't take that home. Leave all your shit here with me and I'll hold on to it until you come back and we can open it back up and bring more shit out. And the more I talked about it and seen it from somebody else's perspective, and I've told Mo this, I'll be honest with you, Mo was one of my biggest cheerleaders because it's hard. I mean, sometimes it's harder to talk about one thing that, than the other, talking about my childhood with my dad. That's not easy.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that usually just, I either get angry or sad. So I just encourage people out there that are having the same struggles, whether they're veterans or not, just seek help. And you hear it 1,000 times, just seek help. I mean, look at the NFL now.
I just want to touch
Same.
on, we talked about a lot of these things that went on in your life, but you touched on it earlier about coaching and the things. And I know that now, life after coaching and doing all these things, that even though his kids are grown and adults, this is still a very bright spot in his life. I've had the honor of having him actually coach my little man. And
That's
I
why
can
he's a
see
champion. Damn it.
that's why. But I just didn't want to leave it on the end of like all these bad, because there is, but Coach Tony created that bond with him. And I think that was born out of the things that the life that he led. And this was his place. He was able to find his happiness started with coaching his son and then spanning on to now. So for those that are listening that go, oh gosh, I'm where he's at, this is the other side. There is another point to it.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Thank you.